When I met Emma, it wasn't one of those movie moments where time freezes and angels sing. It was simpler than that. A Tuesday evening in a crowded coffee shop in downtown Portland. I was there after work, exhausted, scrolling through emails when she accidentally spilled her latte all over my laptop bag. She panicked, apologized 100 times, and I laughed it off. That was the start of everything. Emma had this easy charm, the kind that made people feel like they'd known her for years. Her laugh was loud and unfiltered, her eyes a deep hazel that caught the light like honey. She worked in marketing at a startup, and I was a software engineer trying to climb my way out of a cubicle. We started talking that night, exchanged numbers, and 2 days later, I found myself waiting at the same coffee shop, nervous like a teenager. What began as casual hangouts turned into late-night drives, weekend hikes, and lazy Sundays watching old sitcoms. Emma made me believe that love wasn't supposed to be complicated. She was all warmth, and I was addicted to that feeling, like I finally found home in someone. A year later, I proposed. It wasn't extravagant, no fireworks, no fancy dinner, just me, her, and the beach where we'd first said, "I love you." I remember her crying when I got down on one knee, the wind catching her hair as she whispered, "Yes." It was the happiest moment of my life. At least, it felt that way then. The next few months were a blur of wedding planning, choosing venues, tasting cakes, fighting over invitation designs. Emma wanted everything to be perfect. I didn't care about the details. I just wanted to marry her. But somewhere, between the excitement and stress, something started to shift. She became distant. At first, I blamed work. Her company was going through a big campaign, and she'd stay late often. "It's just for a few weeks," she'd say with that sweet smile that always disarmed me. But then, a few weeks became a couple of months. Late nights turned into weekends away for team retreats. I tried not to overthink it. Relationships were built on trust, right? Still, there were moments that didn't add up. She'd leave her phone face down on the table. She'd giggle at texts and quickly lock her screen. Once I caught a whiff of cologne on her jacket that wasn't mine. I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, I'd seen what jealousy could do to people. I didn't want to be that guy. But doubt has a way of creeping in quietly. Like water through cracks, it finds every weakness in your faith. One Friday night, we were supposed to have dinner at her apartment. She texted an hour before, saying she had to work late again. Something inside me, call it instinct, call it fear, told me to drive there anyway. I told myself I'd surprise her, bring her food, maybe cheer her up. When I pulled into her street, her car was already there. The lights in her apartment were on. My heart started pounding. I climbed the stairs slowly, holding my breath. I could hear muffled voices. Laughter. A man's voice. I froze at her door, staring at the light seeping through the crack beneath it. My stomach twisted. I didn't knock. I didn't even move. I just stood there, listening to her laugh. That same carefree laugh that used to make me feel like I found home in someone.
Was home, now belonging to someone else. After a few minutes, I left. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I just drove aimlessly through the city until the sun started rising. My phone buzzed a few times, her messages asking where I was, if I was okay. I didn't answer. I told myself maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I was wrong. But deep down, I knew. You can't mistake the sound of betrayal. It's sharp, quiet, and unforgettable. The next morning, She showed up at my place, smiling, holding coffee and donuts like nothing had happened. I looked at her and wondered how she could act so normal when my whole world had tilted off its axis. She talked about wedding decorations and playlists, about her bridesmaids' dresses. I watched her mouth move, words spilling out effortlessly, and all I could think was, "Who are you, really?" When she finally left, I sat in silence for hours. I wanted to believe in her so badly. I wanted to erase that moment outside her door and pretend it never happened. So I convinced myself to give her one more chance. But from that day, something inside me changed. I started watching her closely, not out of malice, but because I needed to know if I was crazy or right. 2 weeks later, I got my answer. It was a Wednesday. Emma said she had a late meeting again. But this time, she left her laptop open on the table before heading out. I wasn't proud of it, but I looked. There it was, an email chain with someone named Ryan P. The subject line, "Last night was perfect." My hands went cold. I clicked. There were dozens of messages, photos, plans to meet, jokes about me. "He's so clueless," one of them read. Ryan wasn't some random guy. He was her coworker. The one she'd told me was just a friend. The one who'd be helping out with the campaign. My mind went blank. The words blurred. I closed the laptop, sat back, and just stared at the wall for a long time. It's strange. You think when you find out someone you love is cheating, you'll explode. But I didn't. I just went quiet inside, like a switch flipped off somewhere deep in my chest. That night, when she came home, I didn't say anything. I just looked at her differently. She noticed, of course. She asked what was wrong. I said, "Nothing." She kissed me, smiled, and went to shower. I sat there, listening to the water run, wondering how long she'd been lying to me. Weeks? Months? Since before we got engaged? Every memory started to rewrite itself in my head. The late nights, the canceled plans, the moments she was too tired. Everything that once felt like love now felt like a well-practiced performance. By the time she came out, towel wrapped round her hair, humming like she always did, I knew the truth. The woman I loved didn't exist anymore. Or maybe she never did. I didn't confront her that night, or the night after. I couldn't. Love makes you stupid. It convinces you that pain is temporary and people can change. But betrayal is permanent. It plants itself inside you, grows roots, and poisons every memory you try to hold on to. I kept pretending for another week. Dinners, texts, fake smiles. But I was done. I just needed to find the right moment to let go. And that moment came sooner than I expected.
I used to think heartbreak was a single moment. The instant your chest caves in, the world goes quiet, and you realize you've been betrayed. But it isn't. It's slower than that. It comes in waves. The shock first, then disbelief, then anger that simmers under your skin until it consumes you. That's where I was, living in that slow, poisonous heartbreak. A week after I discovered the emails, Emma and I were supposed to visit the wedding venue for the final deposit. She was excited, flipping through her wedding binder like nothing was wrong, while I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. Every time she smiled, I saw Ryan's name in my head. Every time she said, "I love you," I heard that cruel message, "He's so clueless." By the time we arrived, I wasn't even sure why I came. Maybe part of me hoped she'd feel guilty, confess everything, save me from having to say it out loud. But she didn't. She looked radiant, glowing even, as she showed the event manager our color themes and playlist ideas. I watched her. This woman I thought I knew, talking about our future like she hadn't already destroyed it. That's when it hit me. She wasn't sorry. She didn't even feel bad. And that hurt more than anything. On the drive home, she was humming along to the radio, tapping the steering wheel with her nails, when I finally spoke. "How's Ryan doing?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Her hand froze mid-tap. For a second, she didn't say anything. Then she laughed, a little too loudly. "Ryan? He's fine. Why?" I turned to look at her. "You tell me. Last night was perfect, right?" The color drained from her face instantly. She pulled the car over, her breathing shallow. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie, Emma," I said softly. "I saw the emails." For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the engine. Then she started crying, not the quiet kind, the full-bodied sobs that make your shoulders shake. But even then, I couldn't feel sorry for her, because those tears weren't for me. They were for herself, for getting pot. "It was a mistake," she said between sobs. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. "You made plans with him. You joked about me. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. Her touch felt foreign now, like a stranger's. "It didn't mean anything," she said. "I was just confused." "Confused about what? About marrying me? About sleeping with your coworker?" Her lips trembled. She couldn't look me in the eye. That silence said everything I needed to know. I got out of the car, slammed the door, and walked down the empty street without looking back. That night, she showed up at my apartment again. She'd been crying. Mascara smudged, hair messy, her usual perfect composure gone. She begged me to talk. "I'll end it with him," she said. "Please, I'll do anything. I don't want to lose you." I didn't say a word. I just stood there watching her break down. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman I loved, but as a person I didn't recognize. Someone who could look me in the eyes, promise forever, and betray me without blinking. "You already did," I said quietly. She fell to her knees, sobbing. And that image, the woman I once thought I'd marry, crying on my doorstep, should have made me feel something. But I felt nothing. Just empty. "You can go," I told her. She left without another word. I closed the door, sat on the floor, and stayed there until morning. It was over. At least, I thought it was. Days passed, and she texted me constantly. Long messages, short ones, voicemail saying she missed me, that she'd made a huge mistake. I ignored most of them. Sometimes I'd start typing a reply, something cruel, something honest, but I'd always delete it. What was the point? She already took everything that mattered. My trust, my peace, the future I thought we were building. But people like Emma don't give up easily. The following weekend, she came again, this time with flowers, photos, and an old playlist we made together. "I ended things with Ryan," she said. "For real this time. I blocked him. Please, can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "You ended us when you chose him." "No," she cried, grabbing my hand. "I chose wrong. I was scared of commitment, of losing myself, but I never stopped loving you." I pulled my hand away. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done it. Love doesn't hurt people to feel alive." She stood there, shaking her head like she couldn't accept it. "We can fix this," she said. "People make mistakes. We can start over." "Emma," I whispered, "we were supposed to start forever, but you ended it before it began." She left again, but this time she didn't come back. In the weeks that followed, I went through the motions: work, gym, sleep, repeat. But everything felt hollow. Friends tried to cheer me up, my mom called more often, and my coworker Josh dragged me out for beers just to get me talking. I pretended to be fine, but inside I was drowning.
It's strange, the person who breaks your heart still lingers everywhere. I'd walk past the coffee shop where we met and feel a physical ache in my chest. Every love song on the radio felt like mockery. Even small things like her favorite mug still sitting in my cabinet were reminders I didn't ask for. I tried deleting her photos, but I couldn't. I'd open the gallery, scroll through our memories, vacations, birthdays, random selfies, and I'd just sit there, staring. How do you delete pieces of your life that once felt like home? One night, a message popped up on my phone. It was Ryan. Hey man, I didn't mean for things to go down like that. I stared at the screen, my pulse rising. He had the nerve to text me? You didn't mean to sleep with my fiancée? I typed back. He replied almost instantly. I didn't know she was engaged at first. She said you guys were on a break. I almost laughed. A break? We were planning a wedding. You knew it, I wrote back. You both did. Enjoy each other. I blocked his number after that, but the damage was done.
The anger came flooding back, raw and violent. Not just at him, at her, at myself for believing her lies, for ignoring every red flag because I was too in love to see the truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through tears I didn't even know I still had. Heartbreak isn't cinematic. It's not screaming in the rain or smashing bottles. It's quiet. It's the emptiness that follows when your mind won't stop replaying memories you wish you could forget. A month passed. The wedding date came and went. Instead of exchanging vows, I spent that day alone at the beach, the same one where I proposed. I stood there, watching the waves crash against the rocks, and for the first time, I let myself cry. Not because I missed her, but because I was mourning the version of myself that believed in forever. A part of me still wanted to hate her, but another part knew hate would only keep me tied to her longer. So I made a silent promise. I wouldn't let her define my story anymore. That night, I went home and packed everything that reminded me of her. Photos, gifts, her favorite sweater she left behind. I put it all in a box, drove to a nearby charity drop-off, and left it there. When I walked away, I felt lighter. Not healed, not yet, but lighter. 2 days later, I got an email from Emma. The subject line read, "Please read this." For a moment, I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I just need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I messed up the best thing that ever happened to me. I've started therapy, trying to understand why I ruined something so pure. I'll always be sorry for hurting you. I just hope one day you'll remember me for the good times too." I read it twice. There was no anger in me left to give. Just sadness, quiet, and tired. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Some things don't need closure in words. The silence is enough. That was the last time I heard from her. Months passed, and life slowly started to stitch itself back together again. I picked up new hobbies, reconnected with friends, started running again. Healing didn't come in one big moment. It came in small, quiet victories. Waking up without thinking of her, smiling without forcing it, feeling peace instead of pain. But sometimes late at night, I'd still think about the what-ifs. What if I hadn't gone to her apartment that night? What if I never saw those emails? Would ignorance have been better than the truth? Then I'd remind myself, knowing the truth hurt, but it set me free. And maybe that's what love really is. Not holding on,
but knowing when to let go.
They say time heals everything. I used to think that was a lie, something people said to make pain sound temporary, like heartbreak was just a bad cold you could sleep off. But as months passed, I realized time doesn't heal you. It teaches you how to live with the scars. The first few months after Emma left were a blur of loneliness. The kind of loneliness that seeps into your bones, where silence feels heavier than noise. I'd wake up and instinctively reach for my phone, expecting her good morning text, but it never came. The space beside me in bed stayed cold. The coffee mug with her lipstick mark stayed untouched in the cabinet until one day I threw it away. And just like that, one more piece of her disappeared from my world. I wasn't okay. Not really. But I pretended to be. That's what you do after heartbreak. You fake normal until it starts to feel real. I started running again. At first, it was just to get out of the apartment, to escape the four walls that still smelled like her perfume. But over time, running became therapy. I'd put in my earbuds, drown out the noise, and just breathe. Every mile felt like a small victory. Every drop of sweat was a piece of pain leaving my body. I remember one particular morning. The air was crisp, the sky pale blue, and I found myself at the same park Emma and I used to visit. For a moment, I almost turned back, but then I realized this place isn't hers. It's mine, too. I ran past the bench where we once sat for hours, talking about our future. The memory stung, but I didn't stop. I kept going, faster and faster until my chest burned and my legs ached. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Work became another kind of escape. I threw myself into projects, late nights, and deadlines. My coworkers noticed the change. Josh, my closest friend at work, pulled me aside one evening. "You good, man?" he asked, leaning against my desk. "Yeah," I lied. "No, seriously," he said. "You've been killing it lately, but you haven't smiled in months." I shrugged. Smiling doesn't fix anything. He sighed. "Maybe not, but it helps remind you that you're still human." That stuck with me. That night I realized I hadn't laughed, genuinely laughed, since before the breakup. Everything since then had been muted, safe, controlled. I'd been existing, not living. A few weeks later, Josh convinced me to join a group dinner with some coworkers. I didn't want to go. Crowds weren't my thing anymore. But he wouldn't take no for an answer. "Come on," he said. "It's not a date. It's tacos and beer. You can't say no to tacos." He was right. I couldn't. So I went. That's where I met Maya. She wasn't loud or overly flirty. She had this calm energy, the kind that made people around her feel safe. She laughed easily, asked questions that made you think, and when she listened, she really listened. There was something disarming about her, not in the romantic way, but in the human way. Like she saw the parts of me I'd been hiding. We ended up sitting next to each other the whole evening. I told her about my work, my running, even mentioned I had recently ended an engagement, though I skipped the details. She didn't pry. She just nodded and said, "Some people aren't meant to stay. Doesn't mean they weren't meant to teach you something." That line stuck with me all night. After that, we started talking more, casual texts, then coffee breaks at work, then after-hours walks when the office emptied. She wasn't trying to fix me. She never asked for more than I could give, and maybe that's why I started healing. But healing isn't a straight line. One night, after a long day, Maya and I were sitting by the waterfront. The city lights shimmered across the water, and she turned to me.
"You ever think about her?" she asked softly. I hesitated. "Every day, but not the same way anymore." "How do you mean?" It used to hurt. Now it's just a memory, like a scar. You know it's there, but it doesn't bleed anymore. She smiled faintly. That's how you know you're getting better. I looked at her, not the way I used to look at Emma, but with quiet gratitude. She was right. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt human again. Still, the past has a way of sneaking up on you when you least expect it. It was a Saturday morning when I got a text from an unknown number. Hey, it's me. I'm in town. Can we talk? Emma. My chest tightened instantly. Months of progress suddenly felt fragile. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part, the curious, foolish part, wanted closure. So I replied, Sure. Coffee. 1 hour. We met at the same coffee shop where we first met years ago. I hadn't been there since. When I walked in, she was already sitting by the window. Different somehow. Her hair shorter, her eyes tired, but that same familiar face. Hey, she said softly. Hey. There was an awkward silence before she spoke again. You look good. Thanks. You too. She smiled weakly. I didn't come to make things weird. I just wanted to apologize in person. I've been seeing a therapist. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did. I nodded, unsure what to say. She continued. I was selfish. I thought love meant excitement, butterflies, chaos. But what we had was real, and I was too immature to see it. I'm sorry, truly. Her voice cracked at the end. And for the first time, I believed her. Not because she wanted me back, but because she sounded tired, human. I forgive you, I said quietly. She blinked. You do? Yeah. Holding on to hate was killing me. I don't want that anymore. A tear rolled down her cheek. Thank you. I didn't expect you to say that. I'm not the same person you left, I said. You're not either, and that's okay. We sat in silence for a while, the hum of coffee machines filling the space between us. Then she said something that stayed with me. I hope you find someone who never makes you question your worth again. I smiled. I already have. Me. She smiled back through her tears. And just like that, we both knew. This was goodbye. Not the bitter kind, but the peaceful kind. The kind that lets you finally breathe. After she left, I sat there for a while, staring out the window. The world looked the same, but I didn't. I felt lighter, like I'd finally closed a chapter I'd been afraid to end. When I stepped outside, the air felt different, fresher, softer. I called Maya. Coffee? I asked. Always, she said with a laugh. We met at a new cafe across town. She listened as I told her about the meeting with Emma. When I finished, she smiled gently. You know, letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means you're free to make new memories without the weight of the old ones. I nodded. I think I finally get that. That evening, as I walked home, I thought about how far I'd come. The pain was still there, faint, like an echo, but it no longer controlled me. I realized healing isn't about finding someone new. It's about finding yourself again after being lost in someone else. Emma was a chapter in my life. A painful one, yes, but also the one that taught me the most. She taught me that love without honesty isn't love at all. That sometimes the person who breaks you is also the one who forces you to rebuild stronger. And I was rebuilding, piece by piece, day by day. That night, I wrote something in my journal for the first time in months. It wasn't for her. It was for me. I forgive you. I forgive me. I'm finally free.
There's something strange about healing. You don't notice it happening until one day you wake up and realize the pain doesn't sting the same way anymore. You don't forget the past, but it stops owning you. That's where I was. In the quiet in-between.
somewhere between broken and whole. Months had passed since I saw Emma at that coffee shop. Life had found its rhythm again. I was running regularly, focusing on work, and even started cooking. Real cooking, not microwave dinners and takeout boxes. My apartment, once filled with silence, now had music, laughter, and occasionally the sound of someone else's voice. That someone was Maya. It wasn't a love story that happened overnight. We didn't fall into each other's arms or rush into romance. It was slow, steady, built on conversations that lasted hours and silence that felt comfortable instead of awkward. She'd come over some evenings, bringing takeout and that calm energy that made my place feel warmer. We were both cautious, she from her own past heartbreak and me from mine. But maybe that's why it worked. We weren't chasing perfection, we were learning patience. One night we were sitting on the balcony, watching the rain. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. "You ever wonder what your life would have been like if things had worked out with her?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment. Sometimes. But then I realized, if it had, I wouldn't be here right now, with you. She smiled softly. That's the thing about heartbreak. It feels like the end of everything, but sometimes it's just the start of something better. Her words lingered in the air, mixing with the sound of the rain. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to look back. The past had taught me enough. It was time to start living again. As our friendship deepened, the line between just friends and something more began to blur. There were moments, small, quiet ones, where our eyes met a little too long, or her laugh made my heart skip in that familiar but terrifying way. But I was scared. Falling in love again felt like walking barefoot through broken glass. One wrong step, and I could bleed all over again. But Maya never pushed. She gave me space, patience, and time. Things I didn't even know I needed. One Friday evening, she invited me to her place for dinner. I showed up with a bottle of wine and my usual nervous energy. Her apartment was cozy, filled with soft lighting, plants, and the faint scent of vanilla candles. She was in the kitchen, wearing an oversized hoodie, hair tied up messily. "I tried cooking something new," she said with a laugh. "If we both survive it, that's a good sign." We ended up burning the pasta, ordering pizza, and laughing until our stomachs hurt. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense. No candlelight dinners or slow dances. But it felt real. It felt right. At one point, I caught myself watching her. The way she laughed with her whole face. How she didn't try to hide who she was. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't scared of love anymore. I was just scared of losing myself again. But Maya wasn't Emma. She never asked me to be someone else. Weeks turned into months, and soon we had quietly evolved into something deeper. We didn't label it, we didn't need to, but everyone around us could see it. The way she looked at me, the way I smiled when she walked into a room. It wasn't about replacing Emma or proving anything. It was about rediscovering joy in the simplest, most human way. Still, healing isn't a straight path. The past doesn't disappear just because you've moved on. One night, while scrolling through social media, I saw Emma's name pop up. Against my better judgment, I clicked her profile. She looked happy, smiling in photos, apparently traveling, maybe even in a new relationship. And for a second, a familiar ache hit me. Not jealousy,
Not longing, just memory. I stared at the screen, then quietly closed the app. Maya noticed. "You okay?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yeah, just saw something I wasn't expecting. Her—" I nodded. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she took my hand. "It's okay to look back," she said gently. "As long as you don't stay there." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how right she was. Healing wasn't about pretending the past didn't exist. It was about learning how to carry it without letting it crush you. A few weeks later, Maya invited me on a weekend trip. Nothing fancy, just a small cabin near the coast. I hesitated at first. It felt like a big step, one that would mean acknowledging what we were becoming. But something in me said yes. The drive there was peaceful. Ocean on one side, pine trees on the other. When we arrived, the cabin was everything you'd imagine. Wooden, quiet, surrounded by nature. We spent the day walking the trails, taking photos, and talking about everything and nothing. That night, we sat by the fireplace, sipping wine, the glow of the flames reflecting in her eyes. "You're quiet," she said softly. "Just thinking. About her?" I shook my head. "No. About how I never thought I'd get to feel like this again." She smiled, that small, knowing smile of hers, and leaned in. "You don't have to be afraid of love anymore." And in that moment, something in me finally let go.
Serenity, I got an unexpected email. It was from Ryan, Emma's former coworker, the man who'd helped break everything. "Hey man," it read, "I just wanted to apologize. I've been clean for a year, clean from everything. I know I was part of your pain. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better." I stared at it for a long time. A part of me wanted to delete it, to pretend he didn't exist. But another part, the part that had learned forgiveness the hard way, knew what to do. "Thanks," I replied. "We all make mistakes. I hope you're doing better now." And that was it. No anger, no bitterness, just closure. The final loose thread tied neatly, quietly. That night I told Maya about it. "Wow," she said, "that takes guts." Forgiving him? No, letting go without needing to win. I smiled. I spent too long trying to win. Now I just want peace. She leaned closer, her hand brushing mine. "Then you've already won." Over the next few months, life felt lighter. Work was good. My runs got longer. I even signed up for a half marathon. Maya was there every step of the way, cheering me on, teasing me when I complained about sore legs, surprising me at the finish line with a homemade sign that said, "You did it, heartbreaker." We laughed about it, but deep down, I knew it meant something. I wasn't the heartbroken one anymore. I was someone who had been broken, yes, but also someone who rebuilt himself from the ground up. One evening after dinner, I found myself walking alone along the same beach where I had proposed to Emma years ago. The waves crashed softly, the sky painted in gold and purple. I wasn't there to dwell. I was there to say goodbye. Not to her, but to the version of myself that couldn't move on. I whispered into the wind, "Thank you for the lesson." Because that's what it had become. A lesson, not a wound. When I turned back, I saw Maya walking toward me. barefoot, smiling. She didn't say anything. She just slipped her hand into mine, and together we watched the sun disappear beyond the horizon. It wasn't the ending I once imagined. No grand wedding, no fairy tale, but it was something better. Peace, honesty, and love that didn't need fixing. That night before bed, I looked in the mirror, really looked, and realized I didn't recognize the man who once cried over unanswered texts or begged for loyalty. This version of me had learned to choose himself first. And that's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't destroy you. It rebuilds you, one broken piece at a time.
It's strange how life circles back, how places, people, and moments once filled with pain can, years later, feel like distant echoes instead of open wounds. 3 years had passed since the day my life shattered in that apartment. 3 years since Emma's confession, since the betrayal that burned everything I thought I knew about love. Now, I was 31, standing in front of a small crowd in a cozy community center, dressed in a suit I didn't rent this time. I was giving a talk, something I'd never imagined I'd do. The title on the screen behind me read, "Starting Over, Healing After Heartbreak." Yeah, that guy who once couldn't get out of bed now spoke to strangers about hope. Funny how time works, isn't it? As I looked around the room, I saw faces, men and women who were still hurting, still trying to understand why love sometimes breaks the very people it was supposed to protect. I started speaking. When I was 28, I thought I had it all figured out. I was engaged to someone I believed was my forever. I didn't see it coming when forever turned into goodbye. There was a murmur in the room, people nodding, relating. I took a deep breath. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was what came after. The silence, the confusion, the feeling that maybe I wasn't enough. But heartbreak doesn't mean you're unworthy of love. It just means you loved deeply. And that's something to be proud of. As I spoke, I saw Maya sitting in the front row, smiling. Not with pride, but with that calm, quiet support that had carried me through my worst days. She wasn't my fiancée. Not yet, anyway. We weren't in a rush. We both had learned what patience really meant. After the talk ended, people came up to me, thanking me, sharing their own stories. It was emotional, but also freeing. I wasn't defined by what happened anymore. Later that evening, as Maya and I walked back to the car, she nudged me. "You were amazing up there," she said. "You think so?" "Absolutely. You didn't just talk about pain. You talked about growth." I smiled. "That's what it's all about, isn't it? Growing instead of breaking." "You did both," she teased. "But the growing part looks good on you." Her words lingered in my mind as we drove home. The kind of compliment that touches the soul rather than the ego. Over the next few months, life felt beautifully ordinary. No drama, no lies, just the quiet rhythm of something real. Maya and I had moved in together, and while we didn't call each other soulmates or make dramatic promises, there was something far stronger between us. Trust. She knew my scars, I knew hers. And instead of hiding them, we held them gently. One night, while cleaning out an old drawer, I found the engagement ring I had once bought for Emma. For a long moment, I just stared at it. The small, silver band that once symbolized a future that never happened. Maya walked in, saw me holding it, and didn't say a word. She just stood beside me. After a few seconds, I smiled faintly. I think it's time to let it go. We drove to the coast that weekend, the same beach where everything had once begun. The sky was soft gray, waves rolling gently against the shore. I stood by the water, held the ring one last time, and whispered, not to Emma, but to myself, "Thank you for teaching me what love isn't." Then, I threw it into the sea. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like freedom. That night, back in the cabin, I sat by the fire with Maya. She placed her hand on mine. "You okay?"
"Yeah," said quietly. "Better than I've ever been." She smiled. "You know, you never told me exactly what happened that night, when she confessed." I took a breath, remembering the chaos, the heartbreak. She said she was sorry, but she wasn't. She was sorry she got caught. There's a difference. Maya didn't respond. She didn't have to. "Back then," I continued, "I thought forgiving her would make me weak. But now I get it. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. So you can stop carrying their mistakes." She nodded slowly. "That's exactly why I fell for you." "Because I forgive?" I laughed. "No," she said, leaning closer. "Because you feel everything, even when it hurts. That's rare." Weeks turned into months again, and our relationship deepened quietly. One evening, we were at a friend's wedding, the first one I had attended since mine never happened. I'll admit, I was nervous at first. The music, the vows, the laughter, all of it could have reopened old wounds. But it didn't. As I watched the couple exchange rings, I felt something warm instead of bitter. Not nostalgia, not regret, but peace. Maya looked at me and whispered, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "For the first time, I really am." That night, while dancing under the string lights, I realized that love, real love, isn't about never being hurt. It's about choosing to try again, even after you've been shattered. A few days later, we were sitting on our porch, sipping coffee, when Maya asked softly, "Do you ever think you'll want to get married again?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Someday, but only when it feels like peace, not pressure." She smiled, squeezing my hand. "Then I can wait." And I knew she meant it, because that's what love is supposed to feel like. Patient, kind, steady. Not the burning kind that consumes you, but the kind that stays when everything else fades. That winter, I published a small book, a collection of essays titled "The Vows We Never Said." It wasn't about Emma, or even Maya. It was about me, and everyone who's ever had their heart broken and still found the courage to love again. The book gained quiet attention, not viral fame, but genuine connection. People sent messages, thanking me for putting their pain into words. Some even said it helped them forgive. One message stood out. It was from Emma. "I read your book. I know I'm the villain in your story, and maybe I deserve that. But I'm glad you found peace. You always deserved it." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied simply, "Thank you. I hope you found yours too." No bitterness, no need for closure. Just finality. Years later, standing on a hill overlooking the city, I thought about everything. The heartbreak, the lessons, the love that followed. I didn't regret any of it. Because without the pain, I wouldn't have learned how to heal. Without the betrayal, I wouldn't have learned how to trust again. Without the goodbye, I wouldn't have met Maya. Sometimes the best vows are the ones we never said. The promises we make to ourselves when no one else is listening. Promises like, "I will love again. I will not lose myself for someone else. I will forgive, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace." That night, as the city lights shimmered below, Maya came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Penny for your thoughts?" she whispered. just thinking how far we've come. Together? Yeah, I smiled. Together. And for the first time in years, I felt it. Completely. Quietly. Honestly. Not the excitement of new love, not the ache of old pain, but the calm certainty of a heart finally at rest.